Is XDefiant more popular than Siege right now? Me when I lie, I honestly don't know. I don't know how to get the numbers for that. But as far as I can tell, XDefiant is doing relatively okay. It had a recent season 1 launch with Rainbow actually getting added in the form of the GSK, which are basically just German special ops. And they're clearly inspired, right, by the original cast of characters that got added in 2015 with Vanilla Siege. And they're tactical as fuck. I love the whole design here. So I'm gonna talk about it. Some dudes MG and I yap about Ubisoft? I guess, yeah, we'll just go with it. Also, if the audio sounded choppy in previous yaps, it's because I was using a delete silence diagnostics tool in Adobe Audition to kind of clean it up a little bit. It was a little bit too choppy. You could tell that it was like edited with a computer. So I fiddled around with the settings a little bit to mitigate that. Let me know if that did a good job of doing so. XDefiant is an arcade shooter. It's a Call of Duty clone. If that's not your thing, then you're not gonna like the game. That's pretty much all there is to it. There's sliding, there's jumping around, people, you know, play very aggressively. It's an arcade shooter. It's that classic sort of Xbox 360 era arcade shooter. And what I think it does a really good job of is filtering out the noise. And from a business strategy, I think that the Ubisoft guys at San Francisco that worked on this did a really good job of just picking a lane and staying in it. So XDefiant has generic game modes that we've played before. Domination, escort the thing to the other thing. It has familiar maps. It has familiar arena style maps that doesn't really, you know, offer any super crazy new ideas or features. They're pretty similar kinds of layouts to what you played many years ago. Faction abilities do add some variety to the gameplay, but they're not, you know, particularly crazy. You have similar abilities that are seen in other shooters like Overwatch or Apex Legends. And the game doesn't really introduce, you know, super new mechanics or gameplay systems that we haven't seen before. And in that sense, I think it's really interesting how the game has still managed to stand out, because it relies on tried and true shooter mechanics, but it also has an infrastructure and an ecosystem that has separated it from the rest of the pack. And that's just listening to the player base. One of the big things that XDefiant has going for it right now is the lack of SBMM in a number of different playlists. Now, you can have SBMM, that is skill-based matchmaking that's more akin to true skill, or like an ELO system that you would find in a rank system for a game. That's basically weighing your win-loss and then trying to keep it within that 50%-ish sort of like, you know, keeping games competitive as possible and trying to keep people together in that same skill bracket. Now, ranked does have a system like this, but for every other mode, it doesn't matter. It's random matchmaking, and it just gets people into games as quickly as possible. And if you're at the bottom end of the bell curve, you're gonna get your ass kicked a little bit. If you're at the top end of the bell curve, you're gonna be kicking ass and you're gonna be having a great time. And I think it's interesting to note that one of the things about SBMM that a lot of people really don't like isn't necessarily that tryharding in the game is unfun, but there's a time and a place for tryharding, in my opinion. And an arcade shooter like XDefiant isn't really something that I would, you know, put in the same sort of sphere as something that's competitively involved, like Counter-Strike or, hell, Rainbow Six Siege. If you look at Call of Duty, for instance, and the competitive mode that they have for that, the ranked esports adjacent sort of thing they got going on there, they have to cut so many aspects of the sandbox away from the multiplayer experience just to make it, quote unquote, competitively viable. And at a certain point, I feel like that means that your mechanical design, like the actual mold that is Call of Duty and what it is kind of starting to overstay its welcome. I can't really think of any other game right now besides XDefiant that's been able to stand out just because they listened to their players and they looked at a situation and said, hey, we're going to offer an experience. We're going to offer a player experience that this game, even though we're basically emulating the same sort of, you know, slide and jumping around arcade shooter sort of mechanics, we're going to emulate this, but we're going to stand out in the market because there is a really big demand for this style of experience, for this type of matchmaking environment that doesn't happen within Call of Duty. Because let's be honest, the main reason that a game like Call of Duty would turn up the SBMM in an arcade playlist that has no stakes on the line and has no shiny badge, right, to go up or down to show to your friends. The only reason that you would have SBMM in an artificially inflated playlist is to give people a sense of dopamine or lack thereof so that they can continue to play the game over and over again, because you're trying to drive player engagement. You're trying to drive player retention like a casino. Something else that XDefiant doesn't do is the game does not have a particularly strong attachment to aim assist for controllers. Controllers have a level of aim assist that is more comparable to the games that we played, about a decade ago, rather than the really, really amped up aim assist that you get in Warzone, that you get in Apex nowadays. Now, that's an unpopular statement, but it's the truth. If you've seen videos of what the aim assist is like, especially in Warzone now, you would understand that the controller does a tremendous amount of the mechanical work. It does pretty much the majority of the micro corrections that you need to get precise shot placement. And that's why half the reason that we see a lot of this, much more hyper kind of jumping around, up and down slide canceling sort of style of play is because you can keep your aiming point on the opponent while you're doing all of this stuff more efficiently because you have a machine helping you do it. So with mouse and keyboard, a lot of people, I noticed whenever I would do Call of Duty content and people would try to clown me, right? They would say I'm, walking around like I'm walking through peanut butter and I look like a bot, slicing the pie, like tack shooter fundamentals, which you can apply to any shooter game because of, not necessarily because, we're trying to pretend to be in the army, but because of geometry and math and how perspective works in reality. That's really the main reason that it works. It's got nothing to do with trying to pretend to be a cop. And I'm starting to notice with XDefiant in particular, it's doing a pretty good job of creating a litmus test for FPS players, where if you're getting slammed by people that are jumping around and sliding, then that probably means that your tracking needs a little bit of work in XDefiant. But at the same time, if you're jumping around and you're sliding and then all of a sudden you can't follow through with the shots that you're doing while you're doing all this crap, then you realize that there's an element of your play that's kind of lacking, right? You can move around, but your crosshair placement on target isn't particularly great. So it's just a lot of superfluous movement where you could, more efficiently just slowly peek an angle and then boom. And so that's what I really, really like about the game is that it cuts through all of the nonsense. It does a really good job of speaking to the core of what makes an arcade shooter, and it manages to make an experience that everybody can seem to appreciate in different ways. If you're a competitive sweat, then you're probably going to have fun with the ranked mode. If you're just kicking it on the couch, but you still enjoy this kind of game and, you're going to win, like you're going to, dial in a little bit or try to win, but it's not going to be the end of the world if you lose, and it's random matchmaking. So at the end of the day, it's not completely your fault, right? If you win or lose. What matters is, you tried and you got pretty high up there on the scoreboard. So that means that you contributed. And that's at least the way that I think about it. Whereas with these really algorithmically weighted ranked experiences, there's this sense in shooter games now where there's, a sort of prevailing sense of dread over whether you're going to win or lose. And I think a lot of people are really, really tired of that. I think a lot of people realize that, hey, there's other things that I'm interested in with my fucking life. Like, I don't really care if I'm dog shit at a video game. I just want to play the game because I find it fun. But there's this, weird kind of sense of, well, if you're not good at it, then you shouldn't be doing it, right? You're wasting your time. And XDefiant and games like it speak to the sense of why we play these games to just pass the time growing up. We may not have, realized that we were making them into these, much more involved kind of like skill-based sort of environments that were more akin to sports, but it speaks to the heart of why people play sports. It speaks to the heart of why people, play a pickup game of basketball at the gym, but they're not necessarily trying to make it into the NBA. It's kind of like that. It's sort of become this generation's equivalent, or at least, to me, this is kind of my own equivalent of playing a pickup game of basketball with my friends. It's something that I gravitated myself towards because I didn't really have a lot of places to go, not a lot of third places to, get along with other kids my age because I grew up in the middle of freaking nowhere. This is something that I talked about a little bit in a video not too long ago where I described the sensation of a sort of digital rural kid where you couldn't, you were in the middle of nowhere and you couldn't do shit. You couldn't hang out with anybody. So you spent a lot of time on the internet, and that's what I did. I think that's what a lot of people did. And we kind of created our own, little sort of sports culture by doing this, even though we couldn't really, we didn't really have anybody to hang out with in person. The lead guy for XDefiant, Mark Rubin, was heavily involved in the production, the mechanical framework of Modern Warfare, the series. He's the guy on the cover of the original Modern Warfare 2 that came out around, I think it's either 2009? I forget exactly. I'm not going to Google that. I always say 2008, and then somebody corrected me on that, but I think it is 2009, not 2008. And so I guess in that sense, it's weird to say that this kind of genre of arena shooter has become maybe this generation's equivalent of a boomer shooter. I guess that's fair. You know, because a lot of us are pushing our 30s now. I'm pushing 30, and you know, I'm still having fun with this kind of game, and I think that's cool. I think that it's cool that a game like XDefiant is able to stick around and keep the dream alive for this kind of format of game that's not necessarily a battle royale. I'm really disappointed with the way Call of Duty ended up just completely pivoting into the battle royale thing, because battle royale ended up sucking all of the oxygen out of the room from the shooter space for such a long time, and this allows us to have that kind of respawn, you know, classic domination, capture the flag, escort the thing kind of gameplay that, you know, we had a long time ago. And then, you know, content creators and streamers and the media space that existed for battle royale stuff really just ended up taking priority number one with Call of Duty. And that affected the balancing, it affected the monetization, it affected the pricing models. Like, it's really, really unfortunate, you know, what ended up happening to Call of Duty over the course of many years. And it stinks because I might even end up checking out the next Black Ops, because as far as I can tell, you know, if they don't screw it up, the campaigns, when they do them, are pretty good. I did like the Modern Warfare reboot campaigns. I didn't play Black Ops Cold War. I've had a lot of people actually suggest that I check it out. I heard it was pretty decent. Very, you know, old school kind of Jack Reacher-ish sort of Cold War shenanigans. Maybe this campaign's going to be similar. I'm not sure. But aside from that, you know, I might spend $70 on that and then just basically enjoy that particular campaign. But as far as the multiplayer is concerned, I'm just not sure if I'm going to have a great time with it unless they really tried to add something new to the mix. And, you know, why would I play the boring version of the arena shooter that I've been playing since 2007 when I can play the fun version that doesn't put me against Navy SEALs whenever I have a good game automatically, that doesn't try to prioritize streamers? If I'm going to play a basic arcade shooter that doesn't really have a lot of bells and whistles, then I think I'd rather just play XDefiant. It's free. The progression, as far as I can tell, you know, I think the weapon progression could be tweaked a little bit. It's a little bit too grindy for my taste, but that's fine. I'm still having fun with it. I do, with XDefiant, what I did when I was a kid. When I have a, you know, an extra hour or two to kill and I got nothing else to do and I'm not really in the mood to do anything else, I'll boot up some XDefiant and then I'll jump around and I'll slide cancel on some fools, and, you know, it's a lot of fun. And that's okay. I'm not asking for anything else. I don't need a million different perks to choose from. I don't need a million different attachments, you know, of like min-maxing. Wow! Oh my gosh, guys! Check out this crazy Warzone load. I'm done with all of that. I'm so tired of it. I'm basically admitting that I'm getting out of touch, and I don't care because I don't understand the new shooter generation. I don't understand the obsession with flashy movement versus effective movement that gets the job done. Have my mechanics gotten worse? I honestly can't tell. I was never really good at these kinds of games for my mechanics. That's something that's only, you know, over years and years and years, I've managed to get to a certain kind of baseline with them. I'm not the best mechanical shooter, but as I've gotten older, what I've gotten a lot better at is my positioning, my decision making, knowing when to go into an engagement versus when to run away from an engagement. I'm much more conscientious of those kinds of elements that help me with the shooting rather than making really, really crazy shots all the time. I know how to optimize engagements at certain kinds of distances. How much recoil do I have here? Do I pre-fire? Can I pre-fire this at head level from this distance? Do I have the recoil control to do it? Yes, I do. I have enough ammunition to spray here. Okay. Run back, reload, right? Like, these are all little things that go on in my mind instead of just, you know, shoot, shoot, shoot. There's a million different little micro calculations that happen in terms of your decision making with these kinds of games that don't necessarily have anything to do with shooting. And so that's why I think XDefiant can get away with basically making ability COD, basically making Overwatch COD. It's nothing too crazy. It doesn't really stand out from the rest of the pack. It has like a little bit of flavor to it, but ultimately it's clear that using the Tom Clancy license here with the factions and the abilities is really just a coat of paint for them to have their arena shooter, their take, this particular studio's take on an arena shooter. The Tom Clancy aspect of it isn't particularly relevant. And that's fine. I don't really care because the game is fun. And if the game isn't fun, why bother? In short, XDefiant has crappy netcode. It doesn't do anything too crazy with the space, but it's fun. And I don't care. That's fine. That's enough for me. And I think that if more games like this can come out and just happen, if more games can just happen for fun's sake, like, here's a cool idea, there's a market for it, we think a lot of people are going to play this, and then it comes out and then people do play it, then, you know, there's some money to be made, go for it. I would really appreciate it if we could get back to that style of thinking for the gaming industry instead of this constant freaking just over-analysis, that, you know, this budgeting over-analysis, algorithmic, like, oh, it needs to hit like all the KPIs and this tiny, super precise, you know, market detail, or else, you know, we're just gonna can the whole fucking project. I mean, Christ, look at what happened to Overwatch's PvE mode. How the fuck do you invest all that time and energy into those assets and building something, and then you go, actually, we wasted our time. Whoopsie. We're gonna not release it. Like, what? You're telling me that these guys are supposed to be the geniuses running the industry? Like, these guys are really smart? They all went to like crazy expensive colleges like Yale and shit, and I'm the idiot for thinking that doesn't make any sense? No, man. These guys don't know what they're doing, and XDefiant and Mark Rubin and his guys are proving that if you just get some people in the building that know what the fuck they're doing, that know how to develop a game that's fun, that engages people, then you're gonna attract a target audience and you're gonna make some money. So kudos to Mark Rubin. You guys are killing it. I'm having fun with the game. I don't know if anybody from that studio is watching, but I'm having a great time. So thanks for making it. I've run out of Bud Light and... Okay, and we're back. Also, something that I've noticed is this particular like genre of shooter game, all the trans girls really seem to flock to it. I don't know if it was like a socialization thing of like, oh, well, all the other guys do this, so I guess I have to do it too. And then turns out it was really fun, and so we just kept doing it. I guess, yeah, if the shoe fits. Girls, if you're having trouble with the dating scene, okay, this is what you gotta do. You just gotta go to one of their house parties and then whoop all their asses, okay? Whoop the bros' asses at Call of Duty. That's your ticket, okay? That's the icebreaker. I'm a fucking dork. Okay. Thanks for listening to me yap. I'll see you guys probably not tomorrow. I think I'm gonna take Sunday off, but I'll probably be back Monday, if not tomorrow. Deuces.